our students deserve to be graduated with the skills that they need. But I think it's not an easy question to answer. 1, 2, 3, 4. A lot of questions. Good. I wasn't sure. Yeah. Wait, Sam. Yeah.
My question is shorter than my introduction.
Okay.
I was the a district leader and the chapter chairman at that time here in Riverdale, PS 81 and then District 10. My question is simply, what the things you said, what is the attitude inside the union about these? I know you are like a protest group in the union.
Not a protest group, but okay.
But still, what is the attitude in the union concerning what you're saying now?
Do you mean union leadership or the union membership?
Okay.
They're not the same. Okay? So what happened in union leadership, Moore has existed for less than a year. Moore was founded last summer. And in less than a year ran an election that won 40% of the high school vote and about 10 to 15% of the middle school, elementary school, and functional chapters vote. Unfortunately, and some of you retired teachers might not agree with this, retired teachers made up 53% of the vote in the UFT election. In fact, UFT is the only union that I know of that allows retirees to vote for its current president. 53% of the vote. Now, it says something that less than 20% of active teachers voted in the union, in the election for the union leadership. That says a lot about how teachers feel about the union and the union's role in all of this. But the fact that Moore garnered as much as it did in those school areas, and especially the high school, I think says a lot about the feeling of teachers about what the union's role in this has been.
My name is Michelle Hain, and I'm also a member of Moore, even though I'm not part of the New York City Department of Education. I was last year. I lost my job. I was teaching in a small school, and I'm now teaching in a charter school in New Jersey. But I'm still part of Moore and active in Moore. And I just wanted to say something about what the gentleman said about the UFT and its role and its participation in privatization. That role is enormous, as Mr. Lessuck said. And the UFT leadership, the Unity Caucus, has been running the UFT for 50 years. It is like a monolith. Anybody who is in office has to be part of Unity. You have to be part of, they call it a discipline caucus. In other words, you're not allowed to vote against anything that Unity puts out. So it's absolutely a one-party system. It's the biggest union in the United States. And it's very, very important that a new voice and new life come into the UFT. And the UFT's model for the 50 years, the Unity Caucus's model of organizing has been business partnership. We are a partnership with the DOE. We work with the DOE. And actually, Moore's framework is completely different. Moore's framework is social justice unionism, that we make alliances with the parents, with the students. And we actually think that it's time to talk back to the DOE. So I just wanted to, I'm supporting everything Mr. Lessuck said. And some of the things that the UFT has stood out, in addition to all the things that Mr. Lessuck said, is school closing. Has done absolutely nothing about school closing. And there's been over 100 schools closed in New York City. Another thing they've done nothing about is the ATR crisis. The fact that there's now, I don't know how many, like 1,500 teachers that have lost their jobs, can't get back in the system, because now if you've been in the system for 20 years, it's very hard to get a job because principals have to pay you out of their own budget. So these are all reasons why Moore's a good idea. I just wanted to say one quick thing about the small schools. Because I'm older, I'm almost 60, so I remember back in the 60s, and I think most people here, if you don't mind my saying so, you seem like you have lived through the 60s. The motto of the 60s was small is beautiful. Does everybody remember that? Small is beautiful. And it does seem like there should be some good things about small schools. And the fact of the matter is, if they were networked, you could have those special ed programs, you could have those bilingual programs, but the fact is they are in competition with each other. So that when you're in a school like the one that I was in last year, which was Paul Robeson School, it's now divided up into, it was 3 schools and now it's 4. You actually see the Paul Robeson School is the bad school. That's the school that our school is driving out with our good new values as a new school. So there's just constant moral judgment about schools, and this sets up all kinds of tensions between the students that have to be herded away from each other, and so it sets up it's a dynamic of competition, and that dynamic of competition is driven by testing. And so, I mean, all of these things are tied in together, and the testing drives the low student scores. That's why they're not learning anything, because all they're doing is test prep. That's why when they get to high school, they don't have the skills they need. In addition to the fact that you have an extremely high population in New York now that comes to New York, either they don't speak English or they're from households where English is the second language, and there's very, very real challenges working with a population like that. They need a high degree of attention. So all of these things, and the bad behavior is also driven by test prep, because students that are made to feel stupid act out. And then those students are thrown out of what are you supposed to do as a teacher? You have your 45 minutes, you have a student that's running around uncontrollable, probably because he doesn't understand, but you've got other students that you've got to take care of. What do you do with that student? You have to send him out in the hall. Who's out in the hall? The safety officers and the police. And that feeds into the whole school-to-prison pipeline. So all of these things are intertwined, and I just wanted to say thank you, Mr. Lessuck, for that.
One more?
No, I only saw one, but I'm reading everybody's faces here, and everybody seems alert and focused and interested, so I'm making an executive decision here to allow just those 2 more questions, and then...
These 2 young ladies and that young lady.
We okay?
Thank you so much. Hi, my name is Mary, and I am a special ed teacher at the hybrid school PS11 in the Bronx, just north of Yankee Stadium. And I wanted to address your comments, sir, about the fact that so many graduates of the public school system end up taking 3 semesters of remedial work. And I wanted to say that recently the DOE has dropped the Teachers College program, which was a reading and writing program that we use in elementary school. I'm an elementary school teacher. And I think it was one of the real obstacles to teaching reading to our students. And I believe that reading skills are absolutely key in succeeding in any subject. It is particularly inappropriate for English language learners. I would say also that it's kind of more a progressive model. It really doesn't provide the children with enough structured and actual explicit learning, so they're not coming away with skills in reading. The DOE had a contract with Teachers College to provide that service, and just very thankfully this year, they decided that it was not a program that was working. But meanwhile, we have 5 years of students who were ill-educated because of this program. So it's not so much the teachers.
And we were forced and harassed to use the program. You must know that, and we protest.
I haven't There was an example of an excellent reading teacher in our school who actually was forced out because she refused to use that model. Another problem is the fact that when Bloomberg came in and dismantled the bureaucracy that supported schools, he presented principals as CEOs. It's an enormous job. It doesn't really draw people who have education skills. It draws people who want to be administrators, and they come from the Leadership Academy, which was also another Bloomberg invention. It provided schools with people who were not ready to really direct the school in a productive educational way. Again, teachers not responsible for that. In addition, we have your point about the small schools working against dealing with major issues. I am a special ed teacher, and we are in the middle of phase 2. If you're teachers, you might know what I'm talking about. Phase 1 and phase 2 are DOE movements that have required, in opposition to federal law in special education. Federal law states that we are to provide a free, appropriate public education to special ed students. Phase 1 and phase 2 were implemented to bring or to keep any special ed student in the community location at their community school. That means they were denied access to the various programs which they should have access to, because all the children in your neighborhood school do not have the same specific issue with learning, even though they're all special ed. So you're trying in a relatively small school to provide different models, which doesn't happen because it costs too much. Consequently, children are grouped together in classes where they should not be, and they are often found in general ed classes because no one wants to rock the boat and bring them up for a reevaluation. So, I mean,
I would just say on the special ed is that right now in high schools, because small schools can't provide services, all special ed children in high schools are classified as inclusion. Unless they're so out that they're in District 75, but all special ed are classified as inclusion, which means that they sit in a regular ed class. And if you're lucky, you might have what's called a CTT teacher who does team teaching, so that you'll have 2 teachers in the room, if you're lucky. But most schools don't put the budget into that. So did you understand?
Yes. So,
I see you.
So, is there anything that, I mean, is there hope for challenging the unity slate and making some kind of inroads to change, when most people, and I'm one of them, I've not really been aware of the other movements that have been fighting against unity.
So I think that there is hope. 3 years ago in Chicago, a group like MORE, which actually MORE is kind of we based ourselves on things that they've done. This group started as a group that worked with teachers around school closings, teachers and parents, and grew from that to have the ability to take on their local union leadership. Now, I will say, Chicago, which they were in, their union leadership was in such a disarray that they kind of became a little bit easier for the other group, rival group to win the election. They're standing elections this month, and we'll see what happens on the revote. But that it will take work. The biggest thing is getting more teachers to vote, and that means having more needing to have a larger presence in more schools and more of the struggles around education that unity has turned its back on, that our current union leadership has turned its back on.
But the problem is that this is a nationwide movement. It's not just
That's true.
Not just New York City.
That's true, and that's one reason that I and other people, not more per se, but other people do spend time at the national conventions and working with teachers in other cities to try and do that. I see, Paul, that this young lady's had her hand up for a while.
First of all, I want to say that I can't tell you how moved and how appreciative I am of the statements that were made by the teachers and retired teachers in the room. And with all due respect and not meaning any discourtesy, please do not blame the victim. The children are the victims. Okay? We do this to them. We are the adults in the community. And by we, I mean the collective, everybody. Okay? I am a retired special ed teacher, 27 years here in the Bronx. I love teaching. I love the kids. When I left, it was because the system was killing me. Killing me. I felt that I was part of a criminal conspiracy hurting children. That's how bad it was. Okay. This mayor has single-handedly, all with with all his henchmen, destroyed education in our city. That's how I see it. I was a resource room teacher. In fact, that's why I went into education, because I said, this program is fabulous. You spend time with small groups, children who are pulled out of their regular ed class, who have learning disabilities. Well, of course, for many years, that was wonderful, absolutely wonderful. The children learned. I felt rewarded. It was pure joy going to work. I didn't care how hard, I didn't care how difficult the behavior problems were. They're little kids. They're your children and my children. That's how I saw it. And please remember that everyone, and you can tell by the statements that were made with such conviction, and my experience has been that the majority of teachers adore education. They love learning and they love kids. And they're there for that reason. And at the risk of, I always say this, at the risk of sounding like a dinosaur, because I am one, because I'm in my 70s now, I went to New York City Public Schools. My husband went to New York Public Schools. Our 4 grown children went to New York City Public Schools. And don't tell me that because they were advantaged or white or any of those things that they succeeded and went to the best schools. They went because they got a solid education, as I did, in the New York City Public School. In the time that I taught, the maps disappeared, all those maps that they used to have on rollers in front of the classroom. Everything disappeared. I said, what's happening to education? It felt like I was in some kind of a bad movie where I was walking through some kind of time warp and everything was disappearing. So what I did in my room was I went out and got every map known to mankind. And anything that we learned, we would say, oh, where did that happen? And the children would learn to identify the countries and so on. So as far as the national movement, Diane Ravitch has launched over the past couple of months a national movement. It's on the web, okay? It's fabulous. Leonie Henson, who is the head of Class Size Matters, which has been around for a long time, she is coming to our meeting. We belong to Northwest Bronx for Change, which originally formed to elect President Obama. And we are still going strong, and we have wonderful people from all over who talk about gun control and things that matter to us. She will be at the Northwest Bronx for Change at the Benjamin Franklin Club on May 18th. It's a Saturday from 12:30 to 2:30. And she's going to talk about all the issues that have been raised about education here today, about co-location, about closing schools, certainly class size, overcrowding. And Leonie Henson advertised that she's having a meeting looking for a fall on the 29th, because now the Board of Ed, if you can believe, the city, is giving out the personal information, the private information of students, so that corporations can make money off of it. We're talking about, there was a time when, like, I had to write IEPs in special ed. An individualized educational program is a legal document. You are not allowed to put it down on a counter for anyone else to see. It was a private, sacred document, if you will, okay? The child's life was encompassed in it. Of course, nobody else ever read it.
So, just on that note, in the new testing regime, just let me know how much time.
What I think we can, what I'd like to propose, because I'm seeing a lot of interesting faces here, maybe one more question, and what I'd like to do, propose that maybe we move through the remainder of the program, and then afterwards, if you can stay on, we can continue, if that's okay.
In terms of the testing stuff and the private stuff, is that New York State is one of 24 states that are working with Pearson, the publisher, to produce, it's called the PARCC assessments, P-A-R-C-C. And Pearson is now going to be producing all of the assessments that are done from K through 12 probably getting rid of divisions exams in that process. And that's part of the issue with student information, is that it's going out through Pearson.
Do you call out your name on it?
So that's that. What I would say to all of the retired teachers is that when you get those ballots, when you get that information, when they have those yearly retired teacher UFT meetings, is that's if you want to affect changes in the UFT, find out about more or other movements that are going on. Go to those retired teacher meetings with a group of people so that the unity you don't feel bullied by unity, but raise the issues and let your friends. My mom was retired, also a teacher, retired teacher. She had tons of retired teacher friends. Let them know what the opposition is, what's happening. And if you have a group of people and you want to have a Sunday brunch and invite somebody from Moore over to talk to your friends, we'll be happy to send somebody. If you have, those kind of things, there are things that are happening, but as I said, the issue in the UFT election, 53% of the ballots were retired teachers. Do we need to mobilize new teachers? Yes. But we also need to kind of break up the block of retired teachers that 98% of whom vote for Unity Caucus because they guarantee retirement benefits and health benefits and pay the Part B of the Medicare. So there's that's a hard thing to do if I'm not retired. It's easier if a bunch of retired teachers. I'm sorry, one more question and then I'm going to stay after and yeah.
I'm also yet another special ed teacher, retired. We should have a coven or something. I think it's important to keep an eye on the big picture. There is billions of dollars pushing this alleged reform movement. Bloomberg, Gates, Walmart. There's tremendous tremendous interest in revamping, or as they call it, reforming. Everybody puts scare quotes around reform when you're talking about billionaires reforming public education. One example that occurred to me when somebody was talking was Gates, who is the most preeminent dilettante in this particular enterprise. For 4 or 5 years, his issue was the small school movement. Everything was about school movements. It was the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which pours billions of dollars, or hundreds of millions, into the debate, as it were, for think tanks, media, etc., and so forth. Anyway, they decided after 5 or 6 years, and the test scores weren't improvement, that then they were going to that wasn't enough. That they now wanted to get into improving teaching. In other words, improving teachers. In other words, getting rid of teachers that were there and bringing in people that they could train in their own image, which they've done pretty successfily. Everybody here is retired. You'd be working right now if you had your. I'm sorry. Almost everybody that spoke is retired voluntarily. Scare quotes again, but we probably all retired after 25 years or whatever it took to get the pay. But in the ideal circumstances, I'd probably rather be doing what I did 10, 15 years ago. That was satisfying, that was creative. I was actually producing something for the kids that I was working with. Even if you stay now, the system is such that you can't do what the kids need to have. Everything is like dictated and thrown on you. It's scripted, and this basically comes, and remember, back to the big picture. This is basically top down. It's money, big money coming into, well, I don't know if they want to eliminate public education as a concept, but they certainly want to eliminate the character or change the character of it drastically. And, I want nothing to do with it. And I think it's bad for teachers, needless to say, and it's bad for kids. Anyway, I think it's good to keep an eye on. This is like a ruling class 1% movement. I don't like to use the term ruling class, but 1% is a little more contemporary. This is something that is being foisted upon the population by big money. And I think people have to kind of like see it in that vein.
Okay, so thank you for inviting me.
Jonathan, thank you so much. I could sit and listen and, we'll continue with the program. Those who want to continue with some dialogue, I would love to be part of that. Okay, so moving on now to the remainder of the program. Announcements and sharing responsibility. Announcements, just a reminder, volunteers as always are lots of opportunity regarding the men's overnight shelter, so give a call to Grace or send her an email. Looking way ahead, there's a memorial service on Saturday, June 8th, down in Manhattan at the New York Society for Dr. Spencer. And for next week, all of you who are here, because you're from the education arena, I encourage you to come back again next week, because what you were talking about in terms of the education arena in the current day, the focus next platform is the judicial review of the Affordable Care Act. Miriam Zavala, who is now a Doctor of Nursing Science, I'm very excited about that. She's on faculty at Mount St. Vincent in the College of Nursing, is a member here. I myself, as many of you know, am a retired nurse educator who worked with the special ed population. Much of what is resonating here around the theme of reform, if you come back, all of you educators, next week and listen probably around the very similar theme around healthcare reforms. Please come. Okay, now, sharing responsibility.
Thank you.
Okay, a group song. Having all this dialogue, we have to kind of focus on the singing. Page 54 before the table. 54 before the table. Let us walk in together. Oh, it's very good.
Do we encourage everyone to sing as well?
Yes, everybody is focus a little bit challenging. Numerical sequence, the educator should not take